We have a voicemail number that you can call to leave a voicemail. The number is 469-665-9642.
I'll have to keep this number in mind in case I decide to challenge this gentleman to a debate, or if I'm bored and just feel like making prank calls.
We're going to be listening to an interesting voicemail here. Let's check it out.
He claims that the voicemail is interesting, but as you'll see here in a minute, he outright refuses to address what the caller intends to discuss, so it can't really be that interesting to him.
There is this anarcho-capitalist YouTuber called My Two Cents that tried to debunk your Medicare for All is not slavery video.
Oh, he doesn't just try to debunk it, he thoroughly destroys the idea that Medicare for All is not slavery.
I think it would be cool if you could do a response.
So I've recently responded to the video the caller is referring to as well. And the thing is, at no point in the video does the progressive voice ever even address the argument that Medicare for All is slavery. If he can't even substantiate his own argument initially, why should we be any confident that he can handle counter-arguments?
I think it would also be cool if you could take down these anarcho-capitalist twerps running around the internet all the time.
What's wrong there, buddy? Can't formulate good counter-arguments for yourself, so you have to go kissing up to your little idol there? You know, I think we had a similar situation in that one Tom Hartman video where he talks about taxation. Somebody called Tom Hartman and basically asked, hey, how do I refute the idea that taxation is theft? Having no counter-arguments in mind to the idea that taxation is theft, but still believes the idea ought to be refuted. The evidence comes before the conclusion, not the other way around.
Like esoteric entity, that'd be pretty cool.
Oh dang, my boy Esoteric Entity getting called out.
You know.
Okay.
I love how the video just goes silent for a few seconds while he awkwardly stares into the camera. It's like it suddenly dawns on him that his bullshit's in the spotlight now.
So, I did make a video explaining how Medicare for All is not slavery.
The video never explains that, however. I mean, he does explain what Medicare for All is and how it works, as well as some of the perceived benefits he sees from it, but at no point in the video does he ever address the argument that Medicare for All is slavery.
I got some comments on that video of people saying, who the fuck actually thinks this?
The people who carefully walk through the logical implications of making the claim that you can be entitled to a resource in a positive sense. That's who.
And I guess it got a response from some dude.
Of course, you couldn't have expected this guy to actually have watched the video. I mean, taking the time to consider counter-arguments against the claims I've made? Get out of here with that intellectual honesty nonsense.
Who's an anarcho-capitalist.
A debunking of it was also made by a panarchist, which would be me. It's basically like anarcho-capitalism, but I believe the people who want government should still be able to have it. It's a conversation for another video.
I don't know how you could debunk something like that.
Well, it's pretty easy actually. Simply ask yourself this. If someone is entitled to healthcare as a right, in a positive sense, so not just the right to seek out healthcare uninhibited, but the right to the actual healthcare, from whom are they entitled to this healthcare? When you try to answer that, you start to see where the slavery comes into play. And the same goes for any sort of right you claim in the positive sense. Take a minute to ask from who, and you start to see where the slavery comes in.
Because obviously Medicare for All is not slavery.
Anytime you claim a right to something in the positive sense, you're essentially claiming a right to the time and labor needed to produce that something. Being entitled to somebody else's time and labor against their will is by definition slavery. Ergo, there is no possible way to advocate for positive rights and not also advocate for slavery. This would include a supposed right to healthcare.
As I broke it down in that video.
At no point anywhere in that entire video does he actually ever address the issue of whether or not Medicare for All is slavery. As a matter of fact, in the description you'll find links to both my 2 cents and my response to his video, so that you can verify this for yourself.
But I think the person probably was trying to debunk the idea that Medicare for All is the best system.
He was trying to debunk both. The idea that Medicare for All is the best system and that it's not slavery.
Now, when it comes to the question of whether or not I can go after anarcho-capitalists...
Yeah, you can barely substantiate your own arguments, let alone go after other people's.
I don't take anarcho-capitalists seriously.
Are you going to explain why you don't take them seriously? Or are you just saying that so you can avoid having to address their arguments?
Now, I made a video saying to anarcho-capitalists and libertarians, taxation is not theft.
Oh, that's another video where he absolutely fails to address the argument that he criticizes. I respond to that one as well. Link is in the description.
I did that taxation is not theft video because it's something that is not just said by anarcho-capitalists but also libertarians.
Do you understand why anarcho-capitalists and libertarians make this argument? Because just like with the Medicare for All video, he goes on complete tangents about the benefits that he perceives from what he advocates for, but doesn't address the underlying criticisms.
And I take libertarians seriously. I don't think that libertarians are a joke. But anarcho-capitalists are a complete joke.
So notice how he's trying to differentiate between libertarianism and anarchism. This is what's known as a category mistake. You can't really refer to libertarianism and anarcho-capitalism as if they're something different from each other, because anarcho-capitalism is a form of libertarianism. It would be as absurd as arguing that poodles and dogs are fundamentally different. A simple way to correct this mistake would be to say that you take other forms of libertarianism seriously, but not anarcho-capitalism.
I know that Mr. Dapperton made a video, and in that video he said, you know, his ideal society is essentially a society where everyone comes together and they have guns so that if someone doesn't abide by that, they can shoot them.
If they don't abide by what? Do you actually not know what the non-aggression principle is? Or are you actually implying that anarcho-capitalists just want to go out and arbitrarily shoot people?
Which does anyone really take that serious?
Well, no sir, I don't believe anyone would necessarily be inclined to take your vague misrepresentation of anarcho-capitalism seriously. Now, if you were to actually go into detail on what anarcho-capitalists believe in the non-aggression principle and explain why you believe their beliefs are problematic, then you may have a case to be taken seriously.
Is there a serious situation in which an anarcho-capitalist society, especially within the United States of America, that could work?
Maybe, maybe not. Who knows? It's never been tried. Maybe we could even try something where we start off with one city or state being anarcho-capitalist and see how it works before we expand to the rest of the country. You know, that way you'd have some sort of an empirical basis instead of just making empty shots in the dark.
There's no way.
How can you say that with certainty? Give me one example of an anarcho-capitalist society, not just in the United States, but anywhere in the world, that went horribly wrong and it didn't work. Because I can give you examples of anarcho-capitalist societies that have worked, like Kospaya.
Property deeds would become a huge problem.
Not really. You just have a deed, a survey attached, both of which notarized by a third party. It would work exactly the same way that property deeds work now. It's just that the state would no longer have a monopoly on arbitrating them.
And there's just no way that would work out.
And we maybe get some explanations, my dude. You keep making these claims that property deeds would be a huge issue or that anarcho-capitalism wouldn't work, but at no point do you ever bother to explain how that would be the case.
Anarcho-capitalism is an absolute joke.
Are you going to explain why anarcho-capitalism is an absolute joke? Claiming that an idea is absurd or ridiculous or a joke or whatever, without explaining why that's the case, is known as argumentum ad lapidem, or appeal to the stone.
It's this kind of capitalist fetish.
Really, capitalism is a fetish. Well, we think people should be left alone who aren't hurting anybody, and we think the initiation of force should be avoided. You, on the other hand, think people should be threatened with violence to be told how to spend their money, how to work, how to live. Now that's some kinky BDSM right there.
And it's just ridiculous because it's not going to work. A society in which, you know, everybody comes together and it's peace and harmony, but everyone has guns if they need to attack someone.
See, this guy can't be consistent. If there's peace and harmony, why would there be a necessity for people to have guns to protect themselves with? Does this guy, think through what he says first, or does he just spit out whatever immediately comes to mind?
What do you do with all of the increased equipment that comes through? How are you going to do that with 350 million people? You're going to have an anarcho-capitalist system?
Well, I'm not sure what you specifically mean by equipment, but I do know that the free market does one hell of a job of distributing things to people on a massive basis. Whatever sort of equipment needs to be moved through with 350 million people, I'd imagine a free market would handle it better than the government.
And I know that Mr. Dapperton said something like, I wouldn't my taxes go to these police officers, but I wouldn't choose them. I'd choose someone else, a private one with the best ratings.
What? You're telling me he thinks we should be able to have choices? That we should be able to get our services from whoever has the highest ratings? Gee, that knucklehead, Mr. Dapperton.
Could you imagine how fucked up and how confusing a country of anarcho-capitalism would be?
Perhaps not, but I don't have to imagine how fucked up and confusing life under government is. You have your money taken from you by force to pay for shit you may or may not want. There's hundreds of thousands of arbitrary edicts you're expected to obey on a daily basis to avoid the threat of violence. And the only recourse you have in all of this is to wait 4 years until you can change the jackass who's in charge of it all. So while I may not be able to make an accurate prediction as to how fucked up life would be under anarcho-capitalism, I don't have to imagine or speculate how fucked up it would be under the state. I can just evaluate it.
And the reason I'm not going to engage any anarcho-capitalists is because
You'd get your ass completely and utterly handed to you?
it's a fucking joke. It's an absolute joke.
Everyone's entitled to their opinion, so you have every right to believe that anarcho-capitalism is a joke. But if you want people to take what you're saying seriously, you're going to have to actually say something in addition to that. You're going to have to explain why it's a joke. Because if that's all you have to do is to say it's a joke to debunk it, well then I can say that I think your ideology is a joke and we'd be at a standstill. And if anarcho-capitalism really is just this absolutely absurd, meritless idea that's not even worth your time, then why even bother making this video? If you're not going to actually put any effort to thoroughly debunk it, then why even bother talking about it at all? You're just kind of wasting your time here. I think the real reason he made this video should be fairly obvious. He can't argue against anarcho-capitalism, he knows it, and to avoid looking like a candy ass in front of his entire audience, he basically tries to disguise his cowardice as apathy. Anarcho-capitalism is such a ridiculous idea that I don't take seriously. As a matter of fact, I so don't take it seriously that I'm going to take time out of my life to make a video claiming that I don't take it seriously. That's how seriously I don't take it. I'm sure this guy's able to fool his own audience, but definitely not me. I see right through what he's doing. The progressive voice, more like the progressive pussy. Anyways, this has been Philosophossum, making stupidity, or in this case cowardice, play dead. Have a good one.